Morning, I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioners' Weekly Meeting for January 17th, 2024. I just want to start out by saying that I lost my mom very unexpectedly Sunday night. She was a great person, and we're all struggling a bit with grief and loss, and need a little bit of time over the coming days to help plan the funeral, sort things out with my family, and to help get my dad settled. So I appreciate Commissioners Gilman and Plant continuing forward with the TEP proceeding without me, and everyone else for all their support and condolences. It's greatly appreciated. With that, and maybe one of the worst transitions ever, Commissioner Plant, any preliminary remarks? Are you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented?
No, I want to say, deepest condolences, I think, from the entire PUC family. And I know that this is a really, really hard time, having gone through it myself. And so we're here for you and ready to do whatever we can to make things easier for you and your family. With that, I would approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Gilman.
Good morning. Let also share my condolences, and you work very, very hard here for the people of Colorado. So we're happy to help make things a little bit easier for you this week when you need it. I too would vote to approve the consent agenda. And I did just want to, in my theme of public service announcements, we scheduled 2 remote workshops in my proceeding on BE and DER barriers, which is proceeding 23M-0464EG. So just wanted to get those on people's radar. On Monday, February 5th, we'll hold a workshop looking at kind of the communication and processes to get new loads served, specifically in public services electric territory. And then a second workshop on February 12th, looking also at some of the distribution system capacity issues that we're seeing with electric service for public service companies. So for those interested in those topics, take a look at the PUC calendar so that you can join us if you're able.
I see TV. What time, Commissioner Gilman?
They are from 1 to 5 on each respective day. We'll go until 5 if necessary. We'll definitely start at 1.
All right. Thanks for your leadership. For really important issue. With that, I think I'd like to start with the gas pipeline safety. I think we're going to have several interrelated issues, an overview of the program, the rulemaking, and maybe an update on where we are with the audit and maybe some new rulemaking. So with that, I don't know if it's Director White, Ms. Hensley, Ms. McLaughlin. I turn it over to the team to lead us forward.
Thank you, Chair. And if it's okay with Director White and yourself, I'd like to set some context. These are the last 2 items listed on your agenda today, but as you say, I'm happy to take them first. And the Commission will address matters that do relate to the gas pipeline safety program. Through this program, as you mentioned, Chief Engineer Casey Hensley and her team conduct inspections to ensure compliance with state and federal standards. Chair, with your permission, first I'd like to turn to Chief Hensley to provide a high-level overview of her team and its duties under the Colorado law, implementing those federal inspection standards. Then we propose discussing the current rulemaking that includes recommended rules doubling fining amounts and increasing reporting from operators, but also emphasizing continued stakeholder processes already underway that aim to move forward a follow-on rulemaking to further improve advanced leak detection technologies, considerations, and future reporting. And then finally, as you mentioned, following that discussion, if it's acceptable, and as discussed by the Commission in past weekly meetings, I believe that Director White has prepared some discussion to address and provide public updates on additional actions the Commission and its staff have taken recently that further bolster the gas pipeline safety program. The rulemaking discussion and Director White's updates are ongoing actions that address recommendations provided to the Commission last year in the State Pipeline Safety Program audit. If that outline makes sense to you and Director White, I'll turn it over to Chief Hensley.
That'd be great. Chief Hensley.
Morning. So the mission of the COPUC Pipeline Safety Program, or PSP, is to understand the direct, indirect, and relative risks posed to public safety by the construction, operation, and maintenance of jurisdictional intrastate hazardous gas pipeline systems, to determine the efficacy of jurisdictional operators, procedures, processes, and actions in minimizing public safety risks associated with these systems, and to take the role of pipeline safety advocate in front of the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, advocating for risk minimizing changes to operator procedures, processes, and actions, and/or the assessment of penalties. PSP implements this mission through tasks aimed to prevent safety issues, with audits of operator manuals and records and inspections of operator facilities. PSP is tasked with performing investigations into accidents, events, and other observed activities performed by jurisdictional gas pipeline operators. As a result of the audits, inspections, and investigations, PSP has the authority to issue compliance actions that can range from a warning to notice of probable violation to a hazardous facilities order, as appropriate. Civil penalties are one tool that the PSP utilizes to compel operators to improve safety within their systems. PSP has issued 19 warnings and 3 MPVs to operators during 2023. PSP also employs other tools, including compliance directives and alternative enforcement options, which gives the state flexibility to focus on safety rather than penalty collection. We also work in coordination with our federal counterparts and other state agencies, often referring investigation matters to other agencies like the Safety Commission that oversees incidents caused by excavation damage. Thank you.
I have a couple questions, but maybe we'll keep going through the rules and the new rules in the audit update. Maybe we'll take questions at the end, or you want to take questions now? I'm thinking at the end may be better, but do you have a preference?
No preference. And let's do the end.
Yeah, I think let's do the end. That feels right. All right, Ms. McLaughlin, how would you like to go forward from here? You want to do the rule exceptions, or?
I think that makes sense with a short overview, and then we'll get to each decision point. So before you today is the rulemaking that takes steps forward in the ongoing improvements for the gas pipeline safety program. As the Commission recalls, in 2019, the Commission significantly updated its GPS rules to provide a more public process for filings, reportings, and penalty assessments. In 2022, following Senate Bill 108 and other state and federal statutory updates, the Commission opened this rulemaking to further update the rules for added clarity on public notice of proposed violation processes, but importantly also to double the fining calculations given updated state and federal thresholds and to improve annual reporting. The matter was assigned to an administrative law judge in 2022 to include public and stakeholder comment and propose recommended rules. Concurrent with this rulemaking, as was mentioned, moving forward, the state legislature did direct a state audit of the PUC State Pipeline Safety Program that culminated in an audit report in July of 2023. As we mentioned, Director White will address the recommendations and responses to that report more broadly following your discussion on the rule updates. But of note for this discussion, the audit underscored that the Commission should continue its improvements to reporting, record retention, and updated fining amount thresholds that this ongoing rulemaking was concurrently addressing. The audit also underscored the need for future improvements given technological updates, including specifically advanced leak detection technologies. And the Commission noted publicly in late summer of 2023, in response to that audit, that its staff would begin stakeholder outreach to bring forward a future rulemaking to continue to address those further improvements, as well as the work it was doing in this rulemaking. Following significant written comments and 2 public comment hearings, in November of 2023, the ALJ issued his recommended decision. While the ALJ declined to include specific definitions regarding advanced leak detection technologies, given federal current rulemakings, and because the Commission had already begun a separate stakeholder outreach to bring rulemaking forward in the near future, he recommends adopting rules that require detailed reporting and include calculations to meet top state thresholds in fining for violations. In December, participants filed exceptions and responses seeking clarity or revisions to the ALJ's recommended rules. No participant challenges the significant increase in fining calculation thresholds. However, some operators argue that the Commission should delay not only the advanced leak detection definitions and requirements, but also reporting more generally until federal rules are finalized. Exceptions also argue about the details and timing of reporting. Before getting to those explicit details and correction requests, we would like to address an overarching exception raised by the Southern Ute Tribal Nation, asking that the Commission confirm that its rules do not infringe on tribal sovereignty. With that overview, Chair, I think my colleague, Mr. Foreman, and I will walk through each of the 9 areas of specific exceptions for a vote on each. If it's acceptable, we'll include our recommendations prior to opening it up for your vote or discussion.
That'd be great.
So starting first with the exceptions filed by the tribal nation, the ALJ's decision does not address any comments or rules pertaining to tribal sovereignty. Through exceptions, the Southern Ute Indian Tribal Nation, together with Red Cedar Gathering Company, submitted joint exceptions reiterating comments filed by the tribal nation, requesting that the PUC acknowledge that the rulemaking does not expand the Commission's jurisdiction over tribal national lands, including Red Cedar's pipeline operation, which is located wholly within the tribal nation's reservation. The exceptions ask that the rules be stayed if they could in any way be interpreted to apply to the tribal lands and operations. We recommend granting the clarification that the updated rules for gas pipeline safety, and indeed throughout the Commission's rules, are not in any way inferring or expanding Colorado PUC jurisdiction to tribal lands, nor could they apply to or infringe on tribal sovereignty. No rule changes or stay of the rules is needed. The rules have not and do not now apply to sovereign nations. The order can underscore that staff is available as a resource and welcomes the opportunity to discuss any questions or concerns regarding pipeline safety, but we recommend that the Commission grant this exception, recognizing the sovereignty concerns without staying its decision to implement rules applicable to pipeline operators in Colorado that are not operating on tribal lands. No rules or other changes are needed to offer ongoing conversations with staff and federal authorities, if appropriate or requested by the tribal nation.
Makes sense to me. Commissioner Plant.
I agree with that recommendation.
Commissioner Goman.
I also agree.
As do I.
For the next area, the recommended decision rejected initial proposals in the rules, which required operators to report on advanced leak detection technologies and define that term, or to explain why they were not using advanced leak detection technology. The recommended decision cited concerns that this specific definition and technology development is at an early stage, and that PHMSA rulemaking processes had just begun to define that term on a federal level. The recommended decision therefore expressed concerns that PHMSA's final rules would differ significantly from the Commission's proposed rule, which would result in inefficiencies where operators forced to comply with the 2 sets of rules. In support of the decision, the recommended decision stated that future advanced leak detection technology rulemaking by the Commission would have a more substantial record created as PHMSA's rulemaking progresses, and also noting that there is already ongoing stakeholder processes on the state level to discuss this issue. The Nigrans filed an exception in which they argue that the Commission should not wait for PHMSA's rulemaking to conclude before prompting rules. The Nigrans also requested that the Commission affirmatively set a date to begin the rulemaking. Industry operators filed responses opposing these exceptions and arguing that the Commission should wait until PHMSA completes its rulemaking process. We recommend denying these exceptions in part for purposes of this rulemaking. Following your discussion on discrete points and exceptions, I plan to circle back to this emphasis. But in not adopting a specific definition of advanced leak detection technology here, it does not mean that the Commission's rulemaking anticipated for 2024 and current stakeholder efforts are not addressing this issue. We agree with the ALJ that adopting specific rule definitions and requirements in this rulemaking focused on reporting updates generally and doubling finding abilities might be premature. But as the Commission has already directed, ongoing stakeholder efforts concurrent with PHMSA's rule updates are already ongoing. As you discuss discrete points on exceptions here, the Commission can continue to include its requirements and expectation for robust explanations and information in reporting requirements through this proceeding. With those ongoing stakeholder efforts, we do disagree, however, that the ALJ and follow-on rulemaking will necessarily wait for the full PHMSA rules to be finalized. But the Commission will make its determination on when best to bring forward that rulemaking as it initiates with stakeholders and possibly future legislative action this coming state term. So for this decision point today and the rulemaking, we recommend agreeing with the ALJ that this rulemaking will not adopt a specific definition on advanced leak detection technologies, but emphasizing that the Commission is already pursuing stakeholder input on rulemaking in the near future to address this issue. I'll pause for your vote, and comments now, but we'll plan to circle back to this emphasis at the end of the discussion as well.
Just a quick question. Do we have any visibility into when the PHMSA rules are expected, or is it completely uncertain?
I think that, again, with any rulemaking, it's not entirely clear. There are moving forward pretty quickly, but the Commission is not bound. I think our recommendation today is that the Commission does not necessarily need to wait to open its rulemaking for those processes to fully conclude, which are out of the Commission's control.
Got it. Commissioner Plant?
Thanks, and I agree with the recommendation. I just had another follow-on question as the chairman asked about the sort of the process. I understand there's, the PHMSA process, and we're not sure exactly when they'll be done with that. What happens next there? Does it go to the Congress? Does it just get implemented through the administration? Does it get challenged in court? Does it, what happens? How long are we looking at, really?
It would be similar to state processes. I think that it could go through court actions, but again, there's no need, and quite frankly, the Commission has no control over those processes. There could be a number of avenues that happen after they implement their final rules. So I think, again, that underscores our recommendation today that the Commission not adopt rules here, but not set itself to a timeline that waits fully for federal rules to be implemented, much less challenged, as you allude to, Commissioner Plant.
Gotcha. So once the PHMSA rules are announced, we maybe use that as a baseline for our process, along with our stakeholder process, to sort of build our own approach, just because we, as you said, we don't have any control over how long things are going to take at the federal level.
Right. That's one possibility. I think that the Commission could use, and again, that would be recommended in that future notice of proposed rulemaking that the Commission would bring forward, based on conversations from last year and perhaps your discussion today to confirm. It's hopeful that that stakeholder process would conclude sometime this year for the Commission to move forward with some further rule improvements in this section of gas pipeline safety rules.
Great, thank you. And I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks, Ms. McLaughlin. Yeah, I agree with your recommendation while emphasizing that this commission, at least from my perspective, has a lot of interest in seeing advanced leak detection be deployed. That being said, I think the process you've laid out really allows us to have the most streamlined and efficient deployment of that as we move forward in the state. But just do want to emphasize there is a lot of interest here. I certainly hope that the utilities and other operators are taking this seriously, looking at their options and being as knowledgeable as possible as we move forward with the processes that you laid out to continue to pursue this.
Thank you. With those votes, I will turn it over for the next two. Excuse me.
I don't think I formally voted. I just asked you a question. So
sorry about that, Chair.
I will formally agree with the recommendation, and now you can move on.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. So with those votes, I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Foreman, to address the next two issues.
Thank you, Commissioners. Wyatt Foreman, Commission Counsel. For the next discussion issue, the recommended decision incorporates by reference the National Pipeline Mapping System Operator Standards Manual. The Colorado Springs Utilities, in its exception, argues that incorporating the manual by reference will create confusion due to potential conflict with the GIS data submission requirements contained in Rule 11,000 of the NOPR. We recommend denying this exception and continuing to include the NPMS Operator Standards Manual incorporation by reference. Colorado Springs Utilities does not point to any specific areas of conflict, but rather generally asserts that there may be conflict between the manual and the proposed rules. Any potential conflicts would be governed by the more specific state rules contained in the recommended decision, and the manual standards and information are important for operator reference and accountability. I'll pause for your vote on our recommendation to deny this exception.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gellman.
I also agree.
As do I.
Thank you. For the next discussion point, the ALJ in the recommended decision modified Rule 11,013 subsection B to allow operators to provide the qualifications of individuals who are working on site at a different time and place if they cannot be provided when requested by inspectors. Colorado Springs Utilities filed an exception in which it asserts that the rule should be modified to require a government-issued identification as a verifiable credential, and that qualifications could be provided by specifying an office phone number and point of contact. CNG also filed an exception in which it argued that the rule should be modified to give more flexibility to smaller operators. We recommend denying these exceptions in part. The rule language allows for flexibility regarding credentials provided to inspectors. Limiting verifiable credentials to government-issued IDs, as requested by the operators, limits the flexibility intended in this rule. However, to address the concerns of smaller operators, we do recommend adopting language which allows for qualifications to be provided through an office phone number and point of contact if the qualifications cannot be provided on site. I'll pause for your vote on this fourth area of discussion.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gellman.
I also agree.
As do I.
I will turn it back over to my colleague.
Thank you. For the next item, the recommended decision proposes submittal of GIS pipeline data, but stated that operators would only be required to submit the data to the Commission to the extent the data is available. This decision was based on the record, which demonstrated that at this time, operators may not possess all of the information specified in the rule. The recommended decision also required operators to publish specific information regarding pipelines available through online maps. The recommended decision limits the required information to that proposed and sets the scale of the online map to 1 to the 6,000th based on the maps provided to the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission. Nigrans argue that the inclusion of "to the extent available" language.
Can we move there? Thank you. Keep going.
Thank you. Excuse me. So the Nygren's argument is that this particular language could potentially create a loophole whereby industry operators can circumvent the rules reporting requirements. Industry operators argue that the required mapping scale, which is publicly available, raises serious security concerns due to its potential use for terrorism. Industry operators argue that the scale could be changed to a 1 to the 24,000th, which comports with the standards used by NPMS and PHMSA, or in the alternative that the Commission incorporate confidentiality and proprietary information disclosures into the rule. We have two recommendations related to this exception. First, we recommend denying the exception seeking to change the scale required, but would allow for our operators to provide public and confidential versions of the mapping submissions. Information must be submitted in the required scale format as consistent with other state agencies. And it's important for the Commission to have the mapping detail. However, in compliance with the Commission's rules of practice and procedures, we do agree that operators may provide a public and confidential versions or otherwise avail themselves of the Commission's longstanding confidentiality rules if they believe that critical infrastructure would be too exposed in a public document. The rules can make clear here that if confidential filings are made or otherwise sought, the public version should include GIS information and mapping, but can be at a more appropriate scale. Second, we recommend also denying the Nygren's exceptions, which would remove the to the extent available language. The Commission is taking strides in better record collection and finding abilities. However, operators are correct that small operators especially might not yet have some of the information listed. For the follow-on rulemaking, the Commission and stakeholders can continue to refine these requirements, but allowing reporting that is available now to begin to be collected without the need for numerous waivers or other filings from the operators is appropriate. I'll pause for your vote and any discussion on whether to deny the exceptions as just discussed.
Commissioner
I agree
Plant,
with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. McLaughlin. I agree with your recommendations. Just maybe a question for the second one related to the extent available language. I have a long-standing need to try and close up loopholes as well, so I certainly sympathize here. Can we add, but I agree with you that more reporting in the short term without a slew of waivers is the best way this will move forward. For now, could we perhaps address in the decision language that we certainly expect and hope that the records and amount of information available will continue to improve as we move forward with this process? I think that's in line with our expectations. You know, we don't want this to be a loophole. Instead, we just want to see efficiency as we move forward in the early years of this. But I'd really like to emphasize in that decision, if my colleagues agree, that we certainly expect the records and amount of information able to be reported to continue to increase, and that's our expectation for the industry as part of this. So if that's acceptable, I agree with the rest of your recommendation on that.
I see Commissioner Plant voted thumbs up on that. And I also would like to see Commissioner Gilman's language included in the decision. So with that, I think you and I support the recommendation.
Thank you. And I do think that I agree that ties in with this next recommendation as well, with the expectation and also that operators are certainly now aware of the ongoing expectation for ongoing improvements. So with the next section, the recommended decision required operators to submit annual leak reports and GIS data respectively on or before June 15th of 2024 and March 15th of each year thereafter. And that was certainly included when this rulemaking was initiated in 2022. Industry operators filed exceptions arguing that submission deadlines are now unworkable given that the rules prescribed new data submission requirements and will be promulgated very near to the time of the deadlines set. They assert that they should be afforded the opportunity to collect and maintain information required under the recommended rule, and to develop, validate, and provide cybersecurity tests for their GIS data files. The Niagarans filed a response in which they agreed to a March 2025 filing deadline, underscoring, of course, that that data would begin to be collected consistent with the recommended rules this year. We recommend granting these exceptions in part, moving the filing deadline to March 31st of 2025, so that it gives industry operators sufficient time to collect the data required by the recommended decision and proposed rules, and update their GIS data files to comply with the rules. We recommend the decision language underscore that operators are expected to file fulsome reports which comport with the robust data requirements of the proposed rules as adopted by the Commission, and that the March 31st deadline will also prevent confusion regarding arguments that federal filing deadlines that fall in the middle of the month could cause concerns. So for your considerations, we recommend a vote granting these limited exceptions in part.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
Thanks. I agree with the recommendation and would just reinforce your concept that with the delay, the expectation is that these are fulsome and complete reports. That's the purpose of delaying it. And certainly we would not look kindly if these reports come in and are less than the expectation, especially given the delay.
yeah, and we might put some language like that in the order. So I agree as well.
Thank you. And I'll turn it to Mr. Foreman for the next two.
Thank you. The next discussion point regards the annual leak reporting substantive requirements contained in the NOPR and the recommended decision. The ALJ adopted language that requires operators to submit robust annual leak reports to the Commission. Industry operators filed exceptions seeking clarity on the enumerated reporting requirements and requesting that certain requirements be removed entirely. Industry operators also argued that these requirements should be delayed until PHMSA's rulemaking concluded. The Niagarans also proposed redlined rules for the purpose of making the requirements more workable for industry operators. We recommend adopting clarifying language to make the requirements workable for industry operators and to ensure that the Commission receives comprehensive and robust reports from industry operators. In addition to modifications for clarity, we also recommend striking subsection K, requiring industry operators to submit their estimates of the market value of lost gas. However, we recommend denying all exceptions related to delaying the implementation of these rules until federal rules are fully adopted or until a standardized reporting form is developed. The required report information is clear. Under federal statute, states may adopt additional and even more stringent safety measures if they are not incompatible with federal requirements. If commissioners agree with the recommendations, consistent with the recommended decision, by not adopting more specific definitional language and making clarifications above, the Commission avoids federal incompatibility while at the same time moving forward with obtaining important leak and locational data for the state public safety. These recommendations balance the need to ensure reporting requirements are workable for industry operators while also greatly increasing the information that operators are required to report in service of enhancing pipeline safety. If you agree, the order can make clear specific clarifications on each requirement, but deny the need to update the rules or delay implementation fully until federal rules are revised further. As we have discussed, the Commission will continue ongoing improvements to the rules, concurrent with federal updates in its ongoing stakeholder outreach and anticipated follow-on rulemaking. I'll pause here for your vote on this area of discussion.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
go ahead.
All right, the next subject for discussion concerns submission of annual reports. UCA filed an exception arguing that the rules should be modified to require industry operators to file the annual PHMSA reports with the Commission in addition to annual reports required by the proposed rules. This would require the Commission to open a repository each year for industry operators to file federal reporting forms. We recommend denying this exception. The PHMSA reports are publicly accessible on PHMSA's website. Duplicative reporting would therefore unnecessarily burden the Commission by requiring it to annually open repositories to receive forms which are already publicly accessible. I'll pause here for your vote on this area of discussion.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gutman,
I also agree.
as do I.
In our final substantive area of discussion, we recommend the decision make updates on its own motion for clarity. Primarily, the ALJ modified Rule 11,103, subsection A4, in an effort to align the rule with federal reporting requirements for Type R gathering lines. However, the ALJ's modification could be more clear. We therefore recommend that the Commission update the rule to clearly align with federal requirements and make clear that Type A, B, C, and R lines must be included in the annual reporting requirement, consistent with federal directives. Federal standards also require Type R reporting on a different form, and Commission rules should be updated to include both Type 7100.2-1 and 2.3 form references for clarity. In addition, we recommend fixing typographic errors and rule reference revisions. I'll pause here for your vote on this area.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gutman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. I will turn it back to Ms. McLaughlin to be sure we have what we need and to open it up for any further discussions before Director White's broader conversation on the audit recommendation updates.
I do have one issue. I think I'm going to ask my question here. Is now timely, Ms. McLaughlin, or would you like to finish up with, is there more an exception?
I think the only remaining item, just to conclude, is that the Commission would move forward with adopting the rest of the recommended decision. Importantly, changing that threshold to double the Commission's fining abilities and to move forward with that robust reporting. And then if the Commissioners agree with that, I do think we will be expecting that there's emphasis regarding that ongoing stakeholder process and future rulemaking, and if there's anything else regarding this rulemaking that the Commissioners would like to address.
Yeah, let me just raise my issue here. I suspect that's more for a future rulemaking, if appropriate, than the current one. But you know, in the wake of that, some of the airline safety issues with the door blowing off that plane, I saw something that basically argued that the U.S. implemented a new approach where a company or employee that self-reported concerns or problems did not experience any penalty or adverse impact. Apparently, that safe harbor and change was absolutely transformative for the regulatory culture and safety in the airline industry, as all kinds of problems that weren't previously reported were subsequently disclosed after that safe harbor was put in place. And of course, I know the airline industry and pipeline safety are totally different, but the value of self-reporting may be valuable in both. So is there something like that in pipeline safety where there's a safe harbor for self-reported disclosure of problems? And should we look at, you know, maybe expanding that safe harbor? And I get now is probably not the time in this rulemaking, but just curious, Chief Hensley, if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. While I agree that the pipeline safety and airline regulations are different from a general perspective, I also agree that our goal is to incentivize improvements before they are problems. So ensuring that self-reporting, excuse me, ensuring that self-reporting is definitely a tool in that endeavor. So while some instances may require a notice of proposed violation where the Commission has discretion under state and federal law, we can certainly pursue encouragements of self-reporting and raise the idea of lowering or eliminating some MPVs to best encourage self-reporting to stop problems before they start. Currently, the PSP team takes self-reporting and other factors into consideration when it uses its discretion to bring forward a recommended fining amount and a notice of proposed violation. In our ongoing stakeholder discussions, participants have raised that it could be included in rules more specifically. In addition to more specifics on advanced leak detection reporting, we will hope to bring forward rule proposals for your consideration that create a more codified safe harbor for operators in certain instances when they come forward preemptively and self-report any issues.
Well, I'd love to see it. That just struck me as right. You just want to raise a culture where problems can be disclosed right away with no fear of consequences. So I'd love to see that going forward. With that, I'd be prepared to vote to move the rules forward consistent with the exceptions we granted and denied today. Commissioner Plant, final comments, questions? You ready for a vote?
Yes, I'm ready for a vote, and I would also support moving forward as you described, Mr. Chairman, and just want to congratulate everybody for working so quickly and thoroughly on all these issues. It's obviously an important issue for state of Colorado, for the citizens of Colorado, and I really appreciate all your work.
Commissioner Goman.
Thanks. I also agree with moving forward, and likewise, Commissioner Plant, thanks to our internal team. Thanks also to all the participants in that rulemaking. I know we also had private citizens participating there, which is quite extraordinary for one of our proceedings. And I know it's taken a lot of time and effort for everyone participating, especially private citizens just trying to represent what they see as the public interest here. So certainly appreciate all the participation there to get us to a good next step in moving forward, and appreciate the vision Ms. McLaughlin's laid out for the continued efforts here.
Now I'd echo your appreciation for the Nigrans and for the leadership they've shown, grounded in their personal experience. So with that, Ms. McLaughlin, Director White, Chief Hensley, where would you like us to go?
As far as the rulemaking, I believe we have what we need for a decision. That does need to issue by the end of this month. Would you like that prepared for circulation, or based on the conversation today? I certainly think that Chief Hensley and I can prepare an order consistent with your deliberations, if that is preferred.
My preference would be ABC, but Commissioner Plant, what would you like to see?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
Commissioner Goman?
I think that's fine, so long as we can just include some of the emphasis that we described today.
I think that commitment is there. So, Ms. McLaughlin, anything else on this?
No, with that, I think the outline was to then discuss the audit, what was being addressed in the audit recommendations more broadly, if Director White is online and prepared to go there.
Director White?
I am. Good morning, Chair, members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak to the audit. And just as a way of a bit of background, Ms. McLaughlin spoke to this a bit, but as a reminder to everyone listening, in June of last year, in June of 2023, the Office of the State Auditor completed a year-long review of our pipeline safety program. They issued a complete report in June, which went before the Legislative Audit Committee, and it made in total 39 recommendations for improvement on our program. We agreed with 38.5 of those and have been since moving forward to fully implement the audit. I last came to the Commission on this audit shortly after it was released and made a commitment that our staff would come back to the Commissioners periodically as we implemented the audit, so that we were taking this seriously and moving forward, and as well as the listening public who follows these issues. So that's why I'm here today. We're roughly 5 to 6 months since the audit was released, and want to give the Commission a sort of a fulsome explanation of where we are in implementing these provisions. I'm going to ask Ms. Hensley to deliver most of this presentation because we do want to get into some of the details But if you could pull up the presentation, Casey, I will give you sort of a high level of where we are today.
I am unable to share my screen right now.
I just made you a co-host.
Okay, thank you. All right. One quick second.
That was quick work. Greatly appreciate it.
It was.
If it's still a problem, email out the presentation and one of us can share the screen.
I got it. All right, can y'all see that?
We can.
All right. That's just the cute little first page.
All right, great. Thanks, Ms. Hensley. This is the page I'd like to focus on. So as I mentioned, 39 recommendations were made by the state auditor, and we were agreed with nearly every single one of them. Each recommendation comes with its own deadline, and we were to complete 4 of those by the end of last year, 2 by June and 2 by December of 2023. However, you can see here that as we closed out 2023, our staff has actually completed 19 of the 39 recommendations. This includes, puts us well ahead of the schedule on implementing all of the recommendations. And you can see that we're not just focused on the ones that are right before us, but really reaching out across the deadline schedule and taking this work very seriously. But I want to emphasize this is much more than a check mark exercise. If you go to the next slide, what this audit really means for a public safety program is what it changes. And the audit, I think, brought forward some important recommendations on how we can improve our process and documentation. I think that is our greatest area of agreement with the audit findings and an area we clearly need to improve. So to give you a sense of what this means, and I'll have Ms. Hensley walk through the details, but in implementing the audit, it means a pretty comprehensive overhaul of our program guidelines. And what those guidelines are is essentially the process by which Casey and her team perform their work, so that we have one Bible, so to speak, for how the audits will be conducted, how our inspections will be conducted, how compliance will be ensured. So that those set of program guidelines are really being significantly rewritten and clarified. Another important aspect here is that we have moved online an internal data management system so that we can closely track each and every inspection, each and every audit, know what staff person is lead on that, and what the results are at any moment in time. So this allows Casey to have a really good handle on what every person is working on and what that means for the audit program. That database will also include the outcome, and importantly, this will allow us to look back and search on any individual record. This work is part of a larger progress that's happening across the commission to update our processes and systems. We have a very old set of software, and we're midway through a multiple year cycle to improve a lot of that. But I'm very happy that this was one of the systems we prioritized early on, and that this is now up and running for Casey and her team. Lastly, Casey will also speak to some improvements we're making in our quality assurance and quality control program, which means that we're checking our own work, which is absolutely what we should be doing. So those are just a few of the improvements, but I will ask Ms. Hensley to speak to some of the details and walk you through a few more slides.
Sure, thank you. So this is just a couple of very small update example. I took a little screenshot of how much it has changed, how much our program guidelines have changed. So the intent here is not what's on here, but the fact that it is fully changed. Pipeline Safety Program has contracted the services of the Governor's Office of Information Technology to develop a state-supported data management system, and we're developing the Highland Brand on-base application. And this is a typical status tracker that we visit weekly when we visit weekly with the development team. And currently 2 phases are fully developed and being utilized. So this is the example. And then here are some screenshots of our completed phases of the data management system, the inspection time tracker, which are the first two screenshots, and the incident tracker, which is the last one. And this is an internal process. And here are a few examples of how we have implemented the QA/QC program. So looking forward, Director White, I don't know if you want to go over looking forward.
Go ahead, Ms. Inslee,
Okay.
continue.
The updates as a result of the performance audit have yielded significant changes to our program, which includes improved procedure documents, record keeping of inspection and audits, and a QA/QC process. So without reading the slide. And then the next few slides are more detailed explanations of the recommendations from the audit, with a focus on the due dates and the completion date of each sub-recommendation within each recommendation. So for recommendation 1, they are all, for the most part, due in March and are on target to be completed. Recommendation 2 are due in June and are indeed completed as of December 27th. With the exception of training. Well, this one is for the oversight process, and that is currently being developed. Same here, recommendation 3, due for March and June of 2024, on target to be completed. For recommendation 4, they were due in June of 23 and were completed before the due date. Same with recommendation 5, one was due in December, the rest in March of 24 and were completed in December. And I know it's a lot of words on the slides, which is why I'm not reading through every single one. Recommendation 6 is on target for a March 31st due date. Same with recommendation 7, March 31st due date. It was completed in December of 23. Recommendations 8 and 9 are on target. 9 was completed in December. Recommendation 10 were due in March and June of 24 and were completed in December. 11 due in March are on target to be completed. And 12 on target to be completed. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hensley. I'm happy to take any questions from the commission on this audit and our focus on completing the recommendations.
Yeah, so just maybe a comment with a request. Over the break, I read California Burning, which is a depressing read about the utility management and regulatory breakdowns that led to the San Bruno natural gas explosion that occurred a number of years ago. And I just say, without getting into the details, it's just clear that proper record keeping and documentation is absolutely at the core of public safety. If you don't know what's in the ground, there's just really no path forward for protecting public safety. So I'd just like to continue to ask you, Director Wright and Chief Hensley, to continue to report back to us on progress in implementing the recommendations that came out of the audit, and just make sure we continue to stay on track about improving our systems and sort of the regulatory culture in Colorado. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues, and then, well, actually, I assume you're willing to commit to do that, Director White.
Absolutely. You couldn't be more right, Chair, on the stakes involved in this work. And I have spent a great deal of time with Ms. Hensley and her team since I came on board. I feel very confident they take that job very seriously, but as you noted, our processes have to be, and our data collection have to be as strong as our staff. And that is what the audit pointed to. And I'm very pleased to see the change we've made already. We have some additional work to do, but that's got to stay front and center, and it absolutely is.
And is there any dialogue or conversation with either the people who did the audit or the legislature or, outside review that sort of confirms and validates what we're doing?
Yeah, there are a few steps here, Chair. One obviously is part of the reason I want to come before the commission is so you all can hold us accountable, as well as the folks who listen to this meeting. In terms of our responsibilities to respond to the auditors, in the March timeframe, we will have a comprehensive progress check with the Office of the State Auditor. So for every one of those 38 recommendations, we will have to show where we are in terms of implementation, and not just, again, a check mark, but to show them the documentation that that's been completed. So that is due to the Office of State Auditor in the spring. That progress report is then submitted to the Legislative Audit Committee. As long as we stay on track, that is our primary deliverable. However, if for any reason any recommendations begin to lag behind and miss deadlines, that becomes part of an annual report from the Office of the State Auditor that is across the state government, but highlights any recommendations that haven't been implemented. I very much intend to keep us off that list. So I think our major progress report will be this spring. But to your point, yes, there is oversight from the Office of the State Auditor, as well as from the Legislative Audit Committee. I will also note that because a lot of these recommendations involve our regulatory responsibility with PHMSA, which we perform a lot of our oversight on PHMSA's behalf, there's also a federal component to this as well. So the Office of State Auditor presents to the Office of the Inspector General any audit recommendations that have a federal nexus, which several of these do. So there's a bit of a federal look there as well. And I will note, we have spoken to PHMSA quite a bit about these audit findings. They're very much aware of them. As you know, Chair, PHMSA performs their own annual audit of our program. So we also have very close oversight from our federal partners. I'm pleased to say that when they conducted that last audit, we received a score of 96 out of 100. So they certainly found that we have a very strong program, but we have work to do with our state audit findings. And a lot of good changes are going to come about because of that audit.
Sounds great. I appreciate the update. And, so maybe it sounds like in the March, April timeframe, you'll come back to us either before or after the response to the state audit team and, give us another update.
That would be perfect timing, Chair.
Sounds good. Commissioner Plant?
Thank you. No, I don't really have anything to add except just, congratulations for the work that you've done so far and, really taking all these recommendations seriously and tackling them so quickly. Chief Hensley, you and your team, I think you've done a fantastic job. And Director White, particularly you, I think you came in to this job maybe some weeks before the audit came out, and you were still finding the bathrooms when you were digging the report. So I appreciate your commitment to really diving into this issue and directing it forward and the accomplishments that you've made so far. And I think people of Colorado are really well served. So thank you,
Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. And I'll also just thank you all for kind of the transparency and public exposure that we give this issue and our progress on it, which I think is just important for us to do. We'll have a presentation also today on our equity work. And I think this is all just a huge step forward for the agency in terms of ways of presenting things that are going on internally. That I feel like we didn't always present publicly and kind of bring forth to people to show where we are on issues and how we're progressing, and in some cases what challenges we're facing and where we are. I think that's an important step forward for this agency, and so I certainly appreciate you all taking the lead on it and helping to bring the pipeline safety program into a new era here, certainly with new rules and increased focus on our records. So thank you so much. Continue the great work and very much appreciate the update.
All right, with that, I'd say, significant progress, more work to do, and we'll hear back from you in the coming months. So unless anything else, Director White, Chief Hensley, anything else before we move on?
Thanks very much for the time today.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I guess that was a great transition, Commissioner Gilman, Ms. Crandall, Ms. Shula, and I guess you too, Commissioner Gilman. So wherever you'd like to go on the update on the Senate Bill 210272 work.
Sure, well, I'll welcome Ms. Crandall and Ms. Chula to provide this update, but similar to the previous discussion, this is something the Commission's been tasked with doing, and I think it's important for transparency to the general public, to keep the two of you updated, as well as really to keep this front and center to our stakeholders, to our staff, that this is continuing to be an effort we're focusing a lot on, and just learning a lot, improving and moving these processes forward. So want to keep it in front of you all with these progress updates. And with that, I will turn it over, I think, to Ms. Crandall.
Chair, Commissioner Gilman, if it's okay, I'll just add a few remarks as well, and then definitely turn it over to Ms. Crandall and Ms. Chula. Thank you for that intro, Commissioner Gilman. As you noted, this is a informational update, but really an important step for us to provide transparency for the public, which you just noted very well. I think we're doing a better job at the Commission of bringing topics like this forward. There's so much work that goes on in the background, but we need to be bringing that to the foreground. And as I think presented in the past, I see Senate Bill 272 and the work that legislation required is so important to the Commission, to our work as an agencies, and the culture we bring to the topics that we address in every aspect of our work, from towing to pipelines to our regulation of electric and natural gas utilities. The ultimate outcome here is that you all will see proposed rulemaking that addresses how we incorporate equity in our work. But there are a lot of other steps we have to take as an agency to support implementation. So today, what Ms. Crandall and Ms. Chula will do is take some time to kind of reflect back for you on the prior years of accomplishments. We've gotten a lot done in 2023, and some key areas for work for what we'll focus on in the coming calendar year. So with that, I will turn it to, I don't know if it's Ms. Crandall or Ms. Chula, but they'll walk you through some really incredible work that has happened.
Thank you,
Director. I don't mean to cut you off. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kelly Crandall with the advisory team. While equity legislation was passed in 2021, 2023 has been a really pivotal year for the Commission. Because the legislation didn't address staffing, we've had to really build a different kind of team, and we're grateful for the staff across the agency who have supported this effort through project management and research and outreach and other activities. Another thing that happened this year was the General Assembly took steps to standardize the definition of disproportionately impacted communities through House Bill 23-1233, which better positions us to collaborate with other state agencies on environmental justice. So here's some highlights from activities this past year. Director White formed an executive steering committee to guide implementation of the legislation. We partnered with the Energy Equity Project at the University of Michigan to begin drafting an equity framework, which Ms. Shula will discuss more. And core to this was really creating a staff team to develop some guiding principles to envision how equity could look for the agency. And so with the support of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners and the Energy Equity Project, We also were able to receive support for a graduate student at the University of Michigan who assisted us over the summer with the framework. Commissioner Gilman hosted a workshop early last year providing EnviroScreen demonstrations that brought together staff from multiple agencies on how they use the term disproportionately impacted community and various mapping tools. At the direction of Commissioner Gilman, subsequently, we issued a staff work plan in October that laid out 6 tracks of workshops, which will culminate in a staff capstone report to be filed in June. And we've so far held 4 workshops on the equity framework, an in-person session on tiers of cases for equity requirements, and a virtual workshop on how rules can minimize impacts and prioritize benefits to disproportionately impacted communities. We've been increasingly standardizing our outreach approach for workshops, and I would say we've largely received positive feedback from attendee surveys, but we do also hear that we could continue to improve our plain language and our content to meet the needs of stakeholders with different levels of regulatory experience. Across these workshops, we had over 200 attendees, about 150 unique, and we're consistently seeing attendance from nonprofits, community members, and representatives of disproportionately impacted communities. At our October workshop on case tiering, 26% of the attendees stated that they represented or lived in a disproportionately impacted community. We also continued the process of building relationships with other state agencies looking at environmental justice. And for example, we presented to the Environmental Justice Advisory Board for CDPHE and the Utility Consumers Board for the Utility Consumer Advocate. And we met with representatives from a lot of other commissions, California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Oregon, Texas, Washington, as well as the FERC's Office of Public Participation so that we could learn and share information about their equity work. Finally, we've redesigned many of our public materials for greater usability, including our website, which is puc.colorado.gov/equity, our bi-monthly progress reports, and the workshop emails and templates that we use. So 2023 was a big year, and I want to turn to my colleague, Ms. Shula, to discuss what we're excited about for 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Crandall. Thank you, Director White, and good morning, Commissioners. This is Jessie Shula with your advisory staff. We hope that this year continues to allow us to institutionalize equity within the PUC in 2 main ways. First, we must continue to assess our internal and external actions and processes, understand how they're contributing to inequities within the agency and in the processes we run, and improve those processes. Next, we must assess our rules and the ways that we analyze issues to ensure that we have the tools to consider how to more equitably distribute benefits and minimize burdens pursuant to what we are tasked with in the requirements of Senate Bill 21-272 to ensure that we're improving outcomes of the regulated industry for vulnerable Coloradans. We will advance these goals along 2 paths that Ms. Crandall has already begun to describe. First, the equity framework and associated activities will guide how the agency centers equity internally and in our work. Second, we will continue our pre-rulemaking proceeding and associated activities and present a request for a rulemaking proceeding later this year to establish a pathway to consider equity in all of our work. We have a number of activities upcoming this year to support these goals. The equity framework will be published in March 2024. It is the culmination of a year-long effort across staff, Justin Schote from the Energy Equity Project within the University of Michigan, and stakeholders, and is a set of guiding principles, an agency equity baseline, and agency-wide goals and actions to help us advance equity in our work. We will host a follow-up webinar to provide updates on how we're using the framework in setting agency strategy later in the year. We will continue to provide bi-monthly written updates on our website and bi-monthly updates via these meetings. We have launched an equity advisory focus group consisting of 15 participants from across the state, and they will provide input on various aspects of Senate Bill 21-272 and our improving our processes throughout 2024. We will continue to host workshops that Ms. Crandall outlined. We have 4 more workshops and at least 2 opportunities for public comment planned between now and June 2024. In particular, I'd like to draw attention to a workshop that we're hosting on January 31st on public participation and a comment opportunity in early February. These are outlined on our equity webpage, and I would recommend visiting that webpage for more information on these efforts. At the culmination of the workshop series, staff will issue a capstone report addressing our learnings, and providing an assessment of agency needs from the pre-rulemaking and outlining whether we believe enough information has been gathered that the Commission can move forward with their rulemaking. And then upon the issuance of this capstone report, we hope to work with the Commissioners to initiate one or more rulemakings to comply with Senate Bill 21-272. The scope is still under consideration, but they will collectively ensure that the Commission is adequately positioned to consider equity in all of our work. We also continue to get involved in national and state efforts to learn best practices from other commissions to help explain our work to stakeholders within the state and to learn what the priority needs are across the U.S. and within Colorado. And you can find more information about all of these activities on our equity website. That's puc.colorado.gov/equity. Finally, given that Senate Bill 21-272 did not have an allocation for any specific employees to conduct these activities, we collectively think this progress has been remarkable. This is in large part due to the amazing support of the entire agency and our council, and specifically we'd like to thank Kehinde Abiodun, Harris Adams, Holly Bice, Jenny Boston, Gail Connors, Depeche Depew, Lindsay Dundas, Casey Federico, Pam Fishhaber, Nicholas Foss, Eric Hegland, Ruthie Harper, Shivani Mather, Erin McLaughlin, Tamar Moss, Renata Munez, Erin O'Neill, Becky Quintana, Ismail Reyna, Alex Rosen, Charlie Shikani, Zena Sufiani, Allison Torvik, Jack Turner, Daniel Yen, Director White, and all of the commissioners for their outstanding support of and contribution toward the various activities that Ms. Crandall and I just outlined. Thank you.
Well, I'd just say I was generally aware of what's going on, but really impressed by the community outreach, the internal mobilization, and the progress, moving us towards rules and a capstone support. So just very impressive. Commissioner Plant. Questions, comments, anywhere you'd like to go, sir?
Yeah, no, I don't have any, anything to add. I appreciate all your work. I did have one quick question. Do you know when about the capstone report is expected?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Within the decision that Commissioner Gilman issued earlier this year, we are hoping to issue the capstone report by the end of June of this year.
Great, thanks a lot. Appreciate your work.
Yeah, just a follow-up question. So that'll be in the M docket that Commissioner Gilman is serving as hearing commissioner?
Yes.
Well, Commissioner Gilman, thanks so much for taking this on and helping me forward. Any comments or anything we can do to help drive it forward?
No, I think continuing to host these updates here is a very helpful forum for these efforts, and certainly my sincere appreciation to Ms. Chula, Ms. Crandall, and Director White. Specifically, Ms. Chula and Ms. Crandall have put forth just amazing vision on how we try to wrap our arms around. I mean, one of the most daunting things is just how big kind of the impacts and the things you need to consider are here. In terms of all of the different industries we regulate and all of the different angles with which you could look at equity within those issues. And so they've just put forth a tremendous vision in helping to organize, how we go about tackling this in a workshop issue and in workshops, and then move that forth to kind of a final work product that really directs not just the commission in terms of rules we should be considering, but also Director White in terms of things that would also be considered kind of internally in terms of operations here. So just a very far-reaching effort. And then also just wanted to thank them really for their vision on moving forward with our group of citizens who will now be helping to interact with our staff and advise them on the impacts of equity there. So just a huge thanks to those who applied and those who will move forward in that effort, really providing invaluable service to the state and to our equity initiatives in helping us better move forward with these. And Director White's been incredibly supportive of that effort, and I know is planning to continue involvement there. So a lot going on. The biggest goal now is to keep it organized, to keep it streamlined, and to get to the place where we really have deliverables by that mid-year point so that we can move forward with those actionable measures we all need to take to implement everything we've learned here. So just incredible work going on here, and very appreciative of really the passion that has been driving this, since we don't have, as Ms. Chula pointed out, a specific body for this in terms of, appointed tests in the legislation. We've been doing a lot with the folks here, and they really are incredibly passionate about this and have used just a ton of their own time to move this forward and make great efforts. So very appreciative of where we've gotten so far, and looking forward to more work.
Well, yeah, it seems like given that there's wasn't a pre-existing structure to move this forward, I would just echo Commissioner Gilman's thanks to you, and just add my own on behalf of the agency and the state, thanking you guys for driving this forward. So with that, or anything else? Thanks again. Mr. Gomez, executive session to discuss FERC litigation.
Yes. Good morning, commissioners. It's my recommendation that the commission should convene an executive session immediately following this weekly meeting to discuss participation in litigation at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission pursuant to 24-6-402, subsection 3, subsection small a, subsection Roman 2 of the Colorado Administrative Procedures Act.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with that recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman.
I also agree.
As do I. Anything else on this, Mr. Gomez?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. Proceeding number 23AL-0602 TR, Adventures Out West, Mr. Bramlett.
Yes, good morning. I'm Gary Gramlich of the transportation staff, and was able to finally get the system working, amazingly. For me, that's amazing anyway. But yeah, this is a advice letter and tariff is filed by Marketing Services, Inc., DBA Adventures Out West. It's a carrier based out of Colorado Springs. They have 2 certificates to provide sightseeing service in El Paso, Fremont, Park, Pueblo, and Teller counties. They offer 11 or 12 tours every year. They also change them. Their last rate increase was 2 years ago. In this filing, they're increasing the fares of 4 of the tours. They're all based on the number of hours, either $10, $5, or $1 for the shortest tour. 3 of the tours, there were no increases. As with many carriers, they do also revise the tours they offer. They have 4 new tours and canceling 2, just as whatever the public requests. Their revenue in 23 for the sightseeing service was $2.7 million. The off-road charter, which is an unregulated service, was $175,000, or the total about $2.2 million. Expenses were $2.6 for this January to December. So was remaining $291,000 as the net. The proposals for the rate increases and the estimate of increased passengers by the owner, his estimate of the increase for 2024 is approximately $156,000, and with the increase of the in expenses, which is going to be slightly higher, the net will be, he proposes, will be lower in 2024. These changes are, he states, are based on increased costs of insurance, wages, cost of vehicles and vehicle maintenance, and those may continue throughout this next year. Adventures Out West is one of the larger carriers, operates about 25 vehicles, largest sightseeing carriers in the state, and most of the service, though, is provided pretty much in the Colorado Springs area. And I do have a recommendation. Unless there are any questions.
No, if you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Sure. Would be to allow these proposed tariff changes to become effective by operational law on the proposed date, which is January 20th of this year.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gomer,
I also agree.
as do I. Thank you, Mr. Gramlich.
Mhm.
Proceeding number 23AL-0536E. Mr. Davis, Ms. Harper, Public Service Company, TCA.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. Last November, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an advice letter to adjust its transmission cost adjustment, or TCA, to change on January 1st. The Commission initially took up the company's 2024 TCA tariff at its December 20th weekly meeting because staff had filed a protest. The Commission discussed the matter and concluded that it would bring the tariff sheets back for consideration, possibly to set them for hearing and to keep the 2024 TCA from going into effect at its December 27th weekly meeting. However, before that December 27 meeting, Public Service amended the effective date of the tariffs to January 22nd so that it could work out the issues with staff. We're talking about the filing today because this is the last weekly meeting before the modified January 22nd effective date. Two significant actions have occurred in the meantime. On January 11th, Public Service filed a notice that it had submitted direct testimony in support of its 2024 TCA. The testimony explains how the company determined which 2024 transmission projects to include in the revenue requirement for the 2024 TCA. And the testimony goes on to explain that after discussion with staff on the details regarding this process, there is no longer any dispute with respect to the 2023 TCA projects or the 2024 TCA qualified projects that are included in the rate. Importantly, the company states that it had excluded all 2024 projected capital costs that failed to meet the qualification criteria that was reviewed by staff. It also states that the company expects staff to withdraw its protest as a result of the filed testimony. Public Service also explains that it has agreed to work collaboratively with staff in advance and after the filing of November 1st of each year to address any questions on the TCA in advance of the date when the rates are proposed to take effect, to identify in its filing the rationale for project inclusion, including the projects in the wildfire mitigation plan portfolio, and also to provide staff with information on the projects not selected for inclusion in the TCA. And that would be through a supporting work paper. On January 12th, staff filed a notice of withdrawal of its protest, and in that notice, staff confirms that the company's testimony provides an explanation of the 2024 TCA qualified project selection methodology, and staff explains that an attachment to the testimony provides the information regarding all transmission projects, those proposed to be included or excluded from the 2024 TCA. Recall that the 2024 TCA is intended to serve two purposes. First, to increase the TCA to begin collections of additional transmission investments, including the projected investment costs for the 2024 parts of the Colorado Power Pathway, and also to implement the Commission's directives in the recently concluded public service rate case, where the Commission modified the TCA tariff to implement a new going forward adjustment to the scope of eligible projects. The effect of the filing is an increase in annual revenue of about $58.4 million. That's an increase of $43.6 million above the currently effective TCA rate, and the revenue requirement that it's currently based on of $14.8 million. Public Service explains that the projected impact on residential customers will be a bill increase of about 29 cents per month And for small commercial customers, the increase would be about 41 cents per month. I can proceed to a recommendation, but the main decision point for you now is whether to allow this rate to take effect by operation of law on January 22nd.
If you could make your recommendation, that'd be great. But it sounds like good news. The parties worked out their differences. Nothing gets litigated, and the tariff is going into effect. So.
Right. And accordingly, I recommend that the commission allow the rate to take effect by operation of law now that the matter seems to be resolved.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman.
I agree with the recommendation, and given how busy everyone is, very much appreciate the proactive work to resolve this issue.
And thanks for your help, Mr. Davis, figuring out a procedural mechanism to get this resolved without going to a full hearing. I agree as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Proceeding number 23A-0589, Public Service Company of Colorado DSM plan for 2024 to 2026. Mr. Mendelson.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson of your advisory staff. I'm joined by Alex Cicera of Commission Counsel. At last week's CWM, advisors presented for your decision whether to keep this matter en banc or refer it to an ALJ. Chair Blank raised some concerns and suggested potentially bifurcating the demand response portion of the application in light of other proceedings to be considered in the coming months. Advisors have chatted with each of you, and we would recommend keeping this decision of referral narrow to this DSM-BE application alone. I would also note that the filing auto deems complete tomorrow 1/18. No party has suggested the application is incomplete, but if the commission finds it necessary that more information is needed to determine completeness, a decision to request more information and delay the auto deem would be needed today. I'll pause here for your discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mr. Mendelson. So last week I initiated a conversation about exploring ways of getting to something close to a full-scale demand response bidding process in time to be included as part of the bidding and the all-source bidding in the next ERP filing. I'm still very interested in doing that and would like to bring some ideas forward at our next CWM, where I'd propose we take up that discussion in the context of Commissioner Plant's recommended decision on virtual power plants. But for this case, I had discussed trying to bifurcate the DR issues and looking at that separately in some standalone proceeding. As Mr. Mendelson said, after talking with advisors and counsel, I think I just let this case move forward and not try to bifurcate it. I would, however, ask for some additional supplemental direct testimony requests, likely in an ALJ referral order. More specifically, I'd like to request that the company provide supplemental direct testimony, letting us know if the company's system operators, in fact, rely on electric demand response reductions of 600 megawatts in emergency situations, giving the seeming lack of any real penalties for customers not performing. I'd also separately ask that the company let us know the last 2 times demand response customers were asked to reduce demand through DR and the actual outcomes in terms of the percentages of participating customers and reduced demand. I'm especially interested in the results during Storm Uri. Regarding on-the-bill financing, I'd ask the company to respond to the following straw man proposal on supplemental direct testimony. First, I'd assume this commission approves a $10 million potential increase in funds available from DSMCA to be drawn down at the appropriate time for an on-bill financing program. I'd further assume that IQ customers can borrow for the term of the average measure life at the company's long-term cost of debt set in the last rate case, and assume non-IQ customers can borrow from the DSMCA funds at the company's weighted average cost of capital as set in the last rate case. For the purpose of this straw proposal and the supplemental direct testimony, I just have the on-bill repayment occur through the existing DSMCA line on the bill, So there's no new line item required on the bill, with the accounting maybe getting to the customer through a separate bill insert. I'd also invite suggestions for a third-party entity to administer this program. Maybe the nonprofit Colorado Clean Energy Fund could do it, given the company's ambivalence about this. So I guess 3 requests on supplemental direct. Trying to see if I can find a way to advance your concerns. I mean, I don't know. What did you say? 17 years trying to get to on-bill finance. So I was thinking, let's just outline a program for discussion and see if we can drive it forward. Maybe through a referral order to an ALJ. So I'll stop there. Turn it over to you, Commissioner Plant. See what you think. Take this wherever you'd like to go. Your ideas, response to my ideas, and then we'll go to Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I think that's a good sort of middle path forward. Particularly if we're going to send this over to an ALJ, and one of the I would just add to the on-bill finance discussion. One of the things that we talked about in our last order was looking at on-bill repayment as an alternative to on-bill finance. Difference being that, with one, the company finances and capitalizes. They were proposing that if they were to do that, they do it through the DSMCA, and there were obviously some issues around that as it relates to low-income customers, as it relates to using it beyond using the program capabilities beyond just a DSM application. I think that the Energy Office was interested in possibly using that as a way of financing renewable energy, which obviously wouldn't fall under the DSMCA. And one of the things that we discussed was the opportunity for capitalization through a private fund or private lender, which would then be repaid through the billing process, so that it still is an on-bill repayment as far as the customer is concerned, but that we would use public funds or funds that were available to the company, to the ratepayers, to buy down interest rates for low income, for example, and to try and address credit enhancements and things of that nature with the public funds, and use private funds for capitalization. And so as a sort of addendum to your straw man proposal, I would put that out there as something that the company and the parties could respond to, the company in their supplemental direct, and would strongly encourage the parties, particularly those that have been involved in the stakeholder discussions, to come forward with some full proposals on bill repayment or on bill finance that we could take action on, and that we would have it a record to support within the context of this proceeding.
So I guess the proposal, I support everything Commissioner Plant said. So I guess the proposal back to you is sort of the outline on bill financing I did, with a broader set of funding options and a strong invitation from the parties to help us move this forward. So, Commissioner Gelman.
Thank you. So the overarching idea here is refer it, but right before we refer it, we will issue a supplemental direct decision. So
as part of the referral order.
Go to the ALJ. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm in the zone, on the same page here. With regard to I think it was your first item, you wanted to get like percentage success or action or something, I guess, describe it in the DR program. Yes. So I think that's reasonable. I'm not so sure gross numbers aren't also useful. Okay. So I'd hate to only get percentages, because then it's a little hard to tell in total what's going on. So I would say I would maybe just modify your first request just a bit to make sure it's as actionable as possible and say for each demand response program that has been active to get gross numbers in terms of participation, like enrollment, and then size they think of the loads that are enrolled, and then what the actual in the last few called events, what the actual impact or response, I guess, is the right has been in terms of load. It paints a little fuller picture, I think, very much in line with what you were talking about, but I want to make sure we understand the gross quantities that are at play here. I think what you're getting to is understanding the actual performance of the programs that are at play here. Of course, they can provide percentages. We can also just like divide and get the percentages, but I think the gross numbers are probably like actually a bit more helpful. And I would say, you know, independently for each of the programs so we can understand what the performance has been. That would be my slight modification.
I greatly appreciate the improved request, so thank you.
I'm here for the numbers. So I agree with that, as well as I think Commissioner Plans. I don't know, you think we're going to do this TBC to see the exact language on there, but I agree with Commissioner Plans' supplement to your suggestion as well. Ideally, this sets it up well for the ALJ for this particular proceeding, but also, you know, I think we know there's a lot of directives we've given for the next SI proceeding to really look more broadly at the universe of demand response and the use for different program types and what they could all achieve differently. So certainly looking forward to that as well as we continue to progress these programs. And support, I guess, referring it, given all of this.
So I guess, Mr. Mendelson, I'd be fine with that, allowing this to auto deem complete. And then can we do this as a TBC order?
We can give it a try.
Do we have I guess what I'm asking is, do we have timing constraints?
Yeah, we can draft it and probably get it to you tomorrow or something. And
okay.
Ask Alex if he's okay with that, Mr. Sarah.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about doing this through a TBC process. Mr. Mendelson, do you have everything you need from this conversation to sketch the outline?
I believe I do, yeah.
Okay, yeah, then I think we should be good with that.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Proceeding number 23D-0591E, the city's on lighting, street lighting. Ms. Rosati, Mr. DeCinso.
Good morning, Commissioners. Wendy Rosati of your Commission Council. This proceeding returns for your discussion to decide whether or not to accept a petition for declaratory order. In this proceeding, local governments seek a commission order clarifying responsibility for the energy and maintenance charges for certain highway streetlights located within municipal boundaries. The local governments explain that the Colorado Department of Transportation has taken the position that under state law governing maintenance of city streets and highways, municipalities are responsible for the cost of illuminating highways located within municipal boundaries. The local governments disagree with this interpretation and state that CDOT is responsible as it has not affected the transfer of the streetlights to municipalities. The local governments contend they are not responsible for the service cost of lights they do not own under Public Services customer-owned lighting tariff, which they argue includes several requirements for cost responsibility to be transferred from CDOT to municipalities. Through decision number C23-0861, the Commission granted a request for a stay of deciding whether to accept the petition for declaratory order and set deadlines for responses and replies. On December 21st, 2023 and December 29th, 2023, respectively, Public Service and CDOT filed notices of intervention as of right and alternative motions for permissive intervention. On January 3rd, 2024, Public Service and CDOT each filed a response or a motion in opposition to the petition for declaratory order. CDOT argues the petition should be rejected because the dispute arises out of the interpretation of non-utility related statutes and because the Commission does not have the authority to govern or regulate CDOT. CDOT requests, in the alternative, that the Commission dismiss all portions of the petition that apply to CDOT for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. Public Service argues that the facts asserted in the petition pertain only to the narrow question of payment responsibility associated with street lighting on C470 within the town of Morrison, one of the local governments that filed the petition. Public Service argues that the local governments are essentially requesting the Commission determine whether streets meet certain statutory definitions for all street lighting across Public Service's service territory. Public Service asserts the Commission should reject the petition or accept the petition for the limited purpose of determining whether Morrison or CDOT is responsible for paying electric service for the Morrison C470 lights. To support this request, Public Service states that the matters concerning the other local governments are more appropriately addressed through separate proceedings. On January 10th, 2024, the local governments filed a joint reply to Public Service and CDOT. The local governments state that CDOT and Public Service unnecessarily broaden the controversy and that the purpose of the petition is to resolve a dispute involving if, when, and how Public Service may transfer payment responsibility for state and interstate highway streetlights to local governments under the terms and conditions of the customer-owned lighting tariff. The local governments state that CDOT's involvement in the petition is limited to the fact that CDOT's decisions to stop paying for some street lighting has driven Public Service to demand payment from local governments. The local governments also argue that it would be unfair and inefficient to limit the proceeding to issues involving the town of Morrison, as each of the local governments that filed the petition have street lights serviced by Public Service on state and interstate highways within their boundaries, and several have received similar payment demand letters as Morrison has. With that background, I can turn to recommendations, unless there are questions.
Yeah, if you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
I'll first address the interventions so that responses and certain motions may be properly considered. Under Rule 1401B, a notice of intervention of right must state the basis for the claimed legally protected right that may be affected by the proceeding, and no decision is necessary for timely and appropriately filed notices of interventions of right. Under Rule 1401C, movements requesting permissive intervention are required to demonstrate a pecuniary or tangible interest that may be substantially affected by the proceeding and that the interest would not otherwise be adequately represented. Public Service states that it is entitled to intervene in this proceeding as a matter of statutory right because it is the person, firm, or corporation complained of in the petition. CDOT states it is entitled to intervene because the petition asks the Commission to order CDOT to pay for street lighting. Here, I recommend acknowledging that Public Service is an intervener as of right and granting CDOT's request for permissive intervention. I can pause for a vote or continue on to the main recommendation.
Yeah, why don't you go to the main one?
Thanks. Under Rule 1304, the Commission may entertain a petition for declaratory order to terminate a controversy or remove an uncertainty regarding any tariff, statute, or Commission rule, regulation, or order. Based on the petition, responses, and the reply, there is clearly a controversy regarding payment responsibility for state and interstate highway streetlights located within municipal boundaries. Further, with the clarification provided by the local government's reply, it appears the Commission may properly address this controversy under the terms and conditions of Public Service's street lighting tariffs. Regarding CDOT's motion to dismiss portions of the petition that apply to CDOT, I recommend rejecting this motion. The Commission can take up the questions raised under the tariff, as well as any others appropriate under the petition and within the Commission's authority, while staying within the bounds of the Commission's jurisdiction. I also recommend rejecting Public Service's request that only issues involving the town of Morrison be addressed in this declaratory order proceeding. The petition and reply explain the controversy is relevant to multiple municipalities, and it would be more efficient under Commission processes to allow the municipalities to jointly participate. Therefore, I recommend accepting the petition for declaratory order and rejecting Public Services and CDOT's request to narrow the issues raised by the petition. I also recommend setting a 30-day notice and intervention period and referring the matter to an ALJ.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with all four of those recommendations.
I lost count, so better than me. Commissioner Gilman.
I also agree with all of it.
As do I, and I won't even attempt to summarize it. So thank you, Ms. Rosati.
Thank you. Can that be an ABC order? Or
yes. Proceeding 23F-0611G, Ms. Friedman, UCA versus Public Service Company.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ellie Friedman of your advisory staff. On December 18th, 2023, the Colorado Utility Consumer Advocate filed a formal complaint against Public Service alleging that the company is inappropriately applying a tax gross-up to its short-term debt cost recovery for its gas storage inventories, and that the debt rate itself is incorrect because it is a proxy rate based on 3-month commercial paper, not the company's actual short-term debt rate. UCA argues that Public Service has not been in compliance with the requirements of decisions in the company's 2022 rate case because in those orders, the Commission directed Public Service to apply the cost of short-term debt for return on gas storage inventories, not a proxy for short-term debt, and the Commission did not authorize an income tax gross-up. UCA calculates that Public Service over-recovered some $2 million in the first 3 quarters of 2023 and achieved a return of 7.76% for the gas storage inventory costs, exceeding the company's approved 6.7% weighted average cost of capital. So unless there are questions, I can proceed to a recommendation.
If you could go to a recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors recommend referring this matter to an ALJ by minute entry.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gelman.
I also agree.
As do I. Thank you, Ms. Friedman. Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Rosati, Gas Infrastructure Plan. Take us home. Last one.
Yes, sir. Morning, Commissioners. Mike Mendelson again, joined by Wendy Rosati. This is a continuation of the Public Service Gas Infrastructure Plan. There was a couple of final thoughts and decisions to be made. One area was in the non-pipeline alternatives required in the next GIP. Public Service requested that the Commission limit the number of GIPs, number of NPAs required in its next GIP to 5. It also requested not to expand the evaluation of MPA to other categories beyond capacity expansion and new business. Commissioner Gilman made a proposal to expand the MPA evaluation to safety and integrity projects as supported by several parties, which the Commission decided to discuss with advisors in the period between last week and now. I believe Commissioner Gilman was planning on reiterating that proposal just for the record and for your clarification. If now's a good time, Commissioner Gelman.
Please feel free, Commissioner Gelman, but you convinced me and nobody changed my mind that you were wrong. So if you want to add anything into what you said last week, please feel free. But I thought what you put forward made sense. So wherever you'd like to go.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll probably just add, I mean, I think it's important probably as a separate decision point that the idea of moving forward with only 5 NPAs as put forth with Public Service is rejected, whether or not we include the safety integrity as a separate matter. So I just wanted to get that out there. Certainly folks could or may appeal this, and I want to make sure they understand that in no case, I think, would 5 work. So maybe hit on that first as a first decision point, that we would reject their suggestion that they would only provide 5 MPAs in the next independent of category decision.
I guess Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Yeah. And then the next was, as I indicated at the last meeting, to include the safety and integrity based primarily on 3 reasons. First of all, new information that was submitted in the Clean Heat Plan that shows a remarkably different trend in spending in different categories than we've seen submitted in the GIP. The second was, despite prior arguments that there are safety integrity investments that are potentially avoidable through NPAs, and that we can have processes that ensure that immediate safety concerns or non-suitable projects do not need to unnecessarily go through this sort of analysis, but that any suitable projects could. And then finally, that in this filing, there's a significant amount of ambiguity identified by public service between categories, which I think just brings up some uncertainty in terms of who and at what point these decisions are being made. And it's just much cleaner to not just summarily reject that entire category. And I just wanted to be clear that this is just for the next skip and only in public services. So we will see how it goes in the next skip, but largely part of the intent of this initial filing was to determine what adjustments should be made just for this next skip. So with those clarifications, that's my plan. And then as part of the broader proposal, capacity expansion, new business, and safety integrity category projects would all be considered for MPA suitability. The company's already put forth a project suitability criteria matrix, which they used in their initial NPA evaluation. So I believe they would use something similar in terms of a matrix, identifying the different off-ramps, if you will, or things that would read out a project that is just plain not suitable. And any projects that get through that and are suitable would then go through a full MPA analysis.
And so just one clarifying question. So we're all on the same page. Last week you described sort of a funnel, and to avoid tying up individual projects, it sounded like if there was a clear non-suitability determination, it would just move forward without a non-pipeline alternative analysis. So, and I think I heard that again today, but I just want to see if I said that right, or you would say it different.
Yeah, there's a lot of different awful analogies I can use for off-ramp, funnel, whatever you want to say. But essentially, I mean, the company already did in this first because they put forth just 5 MPAs. And so they ran through a project suitability criteria matrix already, which you can find in each of the project description pages in their initial GIP filing. So it would be a similar, they may need to add some different criteria that excludes projects given the inclusion of safety integrity projects. But I envision a similar process whereby every project enters the process, but then there are these certain things that would exclude a project from being suitable. And that's totally reasonable. We certainly don't intend for there to be any impact on, absolutely immediately necessary safety needs or anything like that. A very reasonable suitability criteria would remove those projects almost immediately anyway, and ensure that then anything that does have some reasonable opportunity of being solved by an MPA and would have an opportunity to potentially save ratepayers money would at least be evaluated to ensure that we're taking advantage of any opportunity to continue to make this system affordable for the ratepayers.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm good with that too.
What she just said.
Mr. Mendelson, Commissioner Gilman, anything else?
I know there are, let me see. I have more notes, of course. So
well, give me
we should clearly be reiterating, I think, in this decision, the concept that the commission put forth in our final decision in the rulemaking, that a collection of projects that serve one need or solve one problem should be seen as one project. We don't want to see those excluded if the bits and pieces or the parts each fall below $3 million. So I think that's important to reiterate. And also, with a project like the Mountain Energy project, that I think it's baffling for us all to see not show up in the GIP where there was clearly an identified need, already some deployment potentially of LNG or CNG, where the company clearly recognizes that something needs to happen there, either an NPA or an infrastructure project. Just want to reiterate that these things should be reasonably showing up in the GIP. Just because they're not fully scoped or fully budgeted, it's essential that we have a proper review here to ensure that we are saving the ratepayers money wherever possible. And so any reasonably understood system need should be represented here so that we can ensure that the company is following the proper kind of NPA analysis and ensuring that those things are considered before the door closes in terms of opportunity to actually evaluate them. So, I think ideally Mr. Mendelson can help us express that concern and that interest, but this whole it's not entirely scoped, so we're just not even going to bring it up thing feels to me to really not necessarily meet the intent of the GIF. We want to ensure these things are showing up so there is a reasonable time for parties to see them, for local communities to see them, and for MPAs to be addressed and implemented before we just get the excuse that it's too late in the process. So if we can just express that sentiment in the decision, I think that would be very helpful.
Fine with that, Commissioner Plant?
Yes, so and the first one was sort of a portfolio, constraint portfolio approach, right? So anything that's addressing a specific or general constraint within the system would all be combined into a portfolio evaluation. Is that right?
And that we had expressed in the rulemaking is that essentially a project should be considered these different parts and pieces that it takes to solve one problem or achieve one thing. They are tied together. So you can't just say, well, this one's one and this one's one and this one's one. That equals 3.
Right.
So that's the intent that I think we'd like to just reiterate, not a change that was in the rulemaking, but I just want to make sure that it's hard to tell. Was the company did that just not occur in this gift cycle, or were they excluded? I don't know. So I think it's important for us to reiterate our intention and how that works.
Yeah, I agree.
As do I. I think we talked about that some last week too. Mr. Mendelson, I think you had a few more cleanup issues.
Yeah, just a couple more community outreach and additional reporting suggestions that were made by certain parties. On community outreach, Denver requested that the commission require the company to provide in subsequent filings estimates of the proportion of peak load served by the proposed capital project by municipality or county. Boulder asked that the company, through its key account managers, should work with local jurisdictions to better forecast relocation requirements. Boulder also asked that the company be required to collaborate with local jurisdictions in developing engagement plans to allow quantification of stakeholder and DI community outreach. CEO suggested that new business projects should be considered in clean heat plans, where the utility could work directly with the customer to assess potential alternatives. Public Service responded that it's okay with Denver's request so long as there is a common understanding that the estimate will not be exact. The company is amenable to providing this information and GIFs for such projects, relation to proportion of peak load by county or municipality. In response to Boulder, Public Service responded that the company's franchise agreements generally provide for annual meetings to coordinate and align on infrastructure projects for the coming year, and more proactive planning and accurate forecasting from Public Services partners could facilitate better planning. It also responded that PSCO already incorporates the suggestions in its outreach regarding stakeholder and DI community outreach. And finally, Public Service agrees with CEO regarding new business projects being proposed via the CHP process, and has advanced the market transformation initiative. But they note that once a new business request is received, their obligation to serve has been triggered. So with that, I'll turn it back to you for your discussion.
Yeah, why don't you make a recommendation?
Sure. With respect to Boulder and Denver requests, advisors would recommend the company continue to work with the broad range of municipalities it serves in order to facilitate good relations and open communication. This is kind of probably an area that Commission should not be directly in the middle of, but try to foster good communication. With respect to the concepts of new business and market transformation, we would recommend the company be required to survey the home construction industry on a regular basis to gauge awareness and interest in home electrification generally, and the company's BE and DSM programs specifically. so that there's a general understanding in its proceedings how well the home development construction industry is aware of the opportunities.
Commissioner Plant. Oh, why don't I go to you, Commissioner Gilman? We're in the gift. So you go first, Commissioner Gilman.
Special gift privileges. I have some elaboration, maybe really helpful. So with respect to the first issue, I largely agree with the issue Denver brought up. There's somewhat of a disconnect from where a project is physically located on a pipeline and where the customers who are served by the project are actually located. And so I would certainly agree with the direction they're going to the greatest extent possible. I'd like to see public service provide information about where the customers served by a project are located, not only where the project is located. And I think that's particularly helpful as we work to advance the forecasting, because of course the municipality in which those customers served by the pipeline are located would dictate what building code they're under, what sort of incentives they might see for things like electrification. So I think that's important to also pair with that localized forecasting so that it provides the most actionable information. I also agree with Boulder that the company should put forth effort through its key accounts relationships with municipalities to better forecast and even look at avoiding potential relocation projects. Many municipalities, as we've seen in this proceeding, share our interest in minimizing future costs of the system on environmental goals and more broadly and on electrifying heating loads more specifically. And they may be active partners in being able to help optimize or avoid future investment in what we largely see come across as those mandatory relocations. So I think an open dialogue there would be a very helpful part of this process. With regard to seeing new business show up in the clean heat plans, I previously struggled with this concept, especially because the argument was largely that this new business crops up pretty quickly and has to be addressed almost immediately. And so I kind of failed to see how a 3 or 4 year cadence on the clean heat plans could properly address that. But I do think public service and CEO have laid out a vision that works in terms of seeing reporting in the clean heat plan framework, just on what has happened, what efforts the company is making. And I also support Mr. Mendelson's suggestion to get better insight and information on what is going on in the construction industry, so we can have some better information in these proceedings. Some of the information about the extent to which we're seeing electrified new construction in these records, I actually find fairly confusing and not very well supported. And so it'd be great to have more information coming through there. And then, I just wanted to acknowledge the current obligation to serve that the company has, that they recognize very frequently in these filings, but just perhaps recognize that I continue to see a different urgency with which the company interprets this on the gas side, whereas there's barely time to discuss or evaluate alternatives versus what we're hearing on the electric side in terms of the company needing to be very strategic about where they're putting their dollars and perhaps seeing customers wait years to get their electric loads served. So perhaps just a relevant time to bring up what I'm seeing as a bit of a discrepancy in how those obligations to serve are being communicated. So with that, those were my input on the community outreach item.
Commissioner Plant.
Great. I support all those inclusions by Commissioner Gilman in the recommendation.
As do I. Additional reporting quickly, Mr. Mendelson.
Yes, it is a reporting. CA requested for earlier and more frequent reporting on NPA projects, including allowing stakeholders the opportunity to review customer and contractor facing materials, as in the Mountain Energy projects, and for regular progress updates on procurement and implementation. Boulder suggested that the commission should require historical budget forecast performance in future GIPs so that there could be better understanding of the effectiveness of the stage gate process and how this may impact NPA cost effectiveness. Public service responds that generally new reporting advocated by the participants should not be required. They do agree to reporting for certain routine activities without specific project info, including a description of the investment category. Why is the investment needed? Why does the work need to be undertaken in the associated time frame, how budget numbers were derived, and risks associated with not investing in the project as proposed.
Commissioner Goman.
Yeah, I certainly see some validity to looking at Boulder's request to evaluate the historical budgeting accuracies, especially given, I think, the wide band of uncertainty that we're seeing be presented for projects, many of them at a plus or minus 30 to 50% level in terms of the budgeting. And would point out, any project in the $2 million range could easily bump into the $3 million range, and we would not have seen it given these sorts of uncertainties. So I think it would be very helpful to be tracking the accuracy on budgeting that we're seeing portrayed by the company so that we can better understand how that looks moving forward. And I think we've got some work to do to look at NPA evaluation and reporting. We have an interim reporting set up right now where I'd expect to hear about NPAs that are moving forward now, but expect we'd make more progress on that in the next skip as well, specifically looking at what that reporting should look like.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I agree with that. Commissioner Gilman, is the idea that the company would just provide that analysis in conjunction with the GIP, or would they contract out, a firm that would actually do an analysis on that?
On the budgeting accuracy?
Yes.
I don't know. I would think they have all the numbers. I would think they'd be able to provide them in terms of what a project was budgeted at and what it was delivered to be. I think part of the issue thus far is we didn't have any transparency into how things were budgeted before they happened, right? We only had a retroactive review in rate cases. So there was no real view of the before and after. Now, ideally, there should be a before so you can determine what projects are even over $3 million and then an after. I don't have any idea if they would do it internally or hire out, but I would suspect they have all those numbers. So we would just get a reporting of them.
Okay, so we're not looking at, sort of an external audit or anything like that of the projects, just an internal review and reporting.
Correct.
Yes, I agree.
As do I, and I think that can be a TBC decision. Mr. Mendelson, anything else on this?
No, that's all I have. Thank you for your guidance, and it will get you the TBC decision shortly, hopefully.
All right. So are you guys, let's take a break till 11:15 and then reconvene in executive session at 11:15. Does that work for you, Commissioner Plant? Commissioner Gilman?
Yep.
All right. See everybody in a little under 10 minutes.